Have you ever felt like you're speaking a different language than everyone else around you? Like you're constantly reaching out, only to realize that nobody's really reaching back? If you're an INFJ, chances are you've been there more times than you can count. And here's the thing, there comes a point where you just stop trying. Not because you're bitter or angry, but because you're exhausted. Today, we're diving deep into the bitter truth about why INFJs eventually give up on making friends. And trust me, this isn't your typical personality type fluff piece. The weight of being misunderstood. Let's start with something that every INFJ knows all too well. The feeling of being completely misunderstood. You see, INFJs aren't just introverts who prefer books over parties. It's way deeper than that. They're people who feel everything intensely, who see patterns and meanings that others miss, and who genuinely want to connect on a soul-deep level. But here's where it gets tricky. Most people aren't wired that way. Most folks are perfectly happy with surface-level chats about the weather, weekend plans, or the latest Netflix show. And there's nothing wrong with that, honestly. But for an INFJ, these conversations feel like eating cardboard when you're starving for real food. They'll smile, they'll nod, they'll engage because INFJs are nothing if not polite, but inside, they're dying a little. They're thinking, is this really all there is? After years of trying to fit into conversations that don't feed their soul, INFJs start to realize something painful. They're not the problem. The connection just isn't there. And when you spend your whole life feeling like an alien who crash landed on the wrong planet, eventually, you stop trying to explain yourself. You stop trying to make others understand. Because honestly, it's exhausting. The energy drain of superficial relationships. Here's something that non-INFJs might not get. Friendships aren't just about having fun for this personality type. They're about energy exchange. And when an INFJ invests their time and emotional energy into someone, they're giving away pieces of themselves. They're listening deeply, remembering details, offering advice, and genuinely caring about your life. They're not doing it for show. They're doing it because that's how they're built. But what happens when that energy isn't reciprocated? What happens when an INFJ realizes they're always the one checking in, always the one remembering birthdays, always the one asking, how are you really doing? While everyone else just texts up once every few months? It creates this massive imbalance that slowly drains them. Think of it like this. Imagine you're pouring water into cups all day long. You fill up everyone else's cup, making sure they're good, that they're hydrated, that they're taken care of. But nobody's filling yours. Eventually, you run dry. And when an INFJ runs dry, they don't get angry. They just retreat. They pull back, not to punish anyone, but to survive. Because continuing to pour from an empty cup isn't just unhealthy. It's impossible. So they stop. They stop initiating. They stop trying to maintain friendships that feel one-sided. And from the outside, it might look like they're being distant or cold. But really, they're just protecting what little energy they have left. The pattern recognition problem. INFJs have this weird ability that's both a blessing and a curse. They see patterns everywhere. In conversations, in behaviors, in relationships. They can usually predict how things are going to play out before they even happen. And while this sounds cool, it's actually pretty isolating. Here's why. When you can see that someone isn't genuinely interested in knowing you, when you can sense that a friendship is based on convenience rather than connection, when you pick up on the fact that people only reach out when they need something, you can't unsee it. You can't just ignore those patterns and pretend everything's fine. Most people can. Most people give others the benefit of the doubt, assume the best, and keep trying even when things feel off. But INFJs? They've already connected the dots. They've already seen how this story ends. And while they might stick around for a while, hoping they're wrong, deep down they know. They know this friendship won't last. They know this person isn't their person. And when you're constantly seeing the end of friendships before they even really begin, why would you keep trying? Why would you invest in something you know won't work out? It's not pessimism, it's pattern recognition. It's their brain protecting them from disappointment. But it also means they end up alone, watching from the sidelines instead of jumping into new friendships. The counselor fatigue. There's this thing that happens to INFJs that nobody really talks about. They become everyone's therapist without ever signing up for the job. People naturally open up to them. They share their problems, their secrets, their deepest fears. And the INFJ listens, offers wisdom, provides comfort. They're good at it too, really good. But here's the brutal truth. Being everyone's emotional support animal is freaking exhausting, especially when nobody asks, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your world?" The relationship becomes this one-way street where the INFJ is always giving, always supporting, always being strong for everyone else. And they can't exactly complain about it because, well, people need them. Except they're people too. They have struggles, fears, and moments when they're barely holding it together. But because they're so good at being the strong one, the wise one, the one with all the answers, nobody thinks to check on them. Nobody realizes that the counselor needs counseling too. After years of this, INFJs start to feel less like friends and more like emotional dumping grounds. They start to resent the very thing they're naturally good at. And that's when they pull back. They stop being available 24/7. They stop answering every crisis call. Not because they don't care, but because they finally realized that caring for everyone else means neglecting themselves. The authenticity standard. INFJs have this impossibly high standard for authenticity, and it makes finding real friends incredibly hard. They can smell fake from a mile away. They know when someone's wearing a mask, pretending to be someone they're not, or saying things just to fit in. And while everyone does this to some degree, we all have our social filters. INFJs struggle to respect people who aren't being real. The problem is, most people aren't walking around being their authentic selves all the time. Most people adjust their personality based on who they're with, what situation they're in, and what they think others want to hear. It's called social intelligence, and it's actually a useful skill. But to an INFJ, it feels like lying. It feels inauthentic. And when you're someone who values depth and realness above all else, watching people perform their way through life is painful. It makes forming friendships almost impossible because the INFJ is sitting there thinking, who are you really? What do you actually believe? What matters to you when nobody's watching? And most people can't answer those questions. Most people haven't even asked themselves those questions. So the INFJ ends up disappointed again and again by people who just aren't operating on their level. Eventually, they stop expecting authenticity from others. They stop looking for it. They stop trying to find friends who meet their standards because, frankly, those people are rare as unicorns. The exhaustion of explaining yourself. There's this thing INFJs have to do constantly. Explain themselves. Explain why they need alone time. Explain why they don't like big groups. Explain why they can't just lighten up and have fun. Explain why they're quiet sometimes. Explain why they're thinking so deeply about things. It's like being a foreign exchange student who has to constantly translate their culture for people who don't really care to understand. And here's the thing, after the 100th time explaining that you're not mad, you're just processing, or that you're not antisocial, you're selectively social, you just stop. You stop explaining. You stop justifying your need for depth, for meaning, for authentic connection. Because if people don't get it by now, they're never going to get it. This is a huge reason why INFJs stop trying to make friends. They're tired of defending who they are. They're tired of being told they're too sensitive, too intense, or too deep. They're tired of people trying to change them into someone more easygoing, more spontaneous, more normal. Because there's nothing wrong with them. They're just different. And when you spend your whole life being told that your differences are problems that need fixing, you eventually give up on finding people who accept you as you are. You stop trying to fit into spaces that weren't built for you. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. And yeah, that means you end up with fewer friends. But at least you're not constantly exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. The disappointment cycle. Let's talk about something painful. The cycle of hope and disappointment that INFJs go through. It usually goes like this. They meet someone new, someone who seems different, someone who actually asks deeper questions and seems interested in real conversation. The INFJ gets excited. Finally, they think. Finally, someone who gets it. They start to open up. They share their thoughts, their dreams, their weird observations about life. And for a while, it's great. The friendship feels promising. But then, slowly, things start to shift. The deep conversations become less frequent. The texts get shorter. The plans start falling through. And the INFJ realizes, once again, that this person wasn't actually looking for the kind of friendship they need. Maybe the other person got overwhelmed by the intensity. Maybe they were just being polite. Maybe they liked the idea of a deep friendship, but not the reality of it. Whatever the reason, the pattern repeats. And each time it does, it chips away a little more at the INFJ's willingness to try. Because here's the thing about disappointment. It's cumulative. The first few times you bounce back. You tell yourself it wasn't meant to be, and you try again. But after the 10th time, the 20th, you start to protect yourself. You start to assume that every new person will eventually disappoint you. Not because you're negative, but because your experience has taught you to expect it. So INFJs stop getting their hopes up. They stop investing early. They keep people at arm's length, waiting to see if they'll actually stick around. And most people don't pass the test because they don't even know there is a test. They just think the INFJ is cold or distant, never realizing that they're just protecting a heart that's been broken too many times by people who couldn't handle their depth. The quality over quantity realization. At some point, INFJs have this huge realization. They don't actually want a lot of friends. They never did. What they wanted was one or two people who truly understood them. One or two souls who could go deep, who could handle their intensity, who could appreciate their complexity without trying to simplify them. And once they realize this, the whole game changes. They stop trying to have a big social circle. They stop forcing themselves to attend events they hate. They stop pretending to enjoy small talk at parties. Because they've finally accepted that they're not wired for breadth, they're wired for depth. This realization is both freeing and isolating. It's freeing because they can finally stop pretending. They can stop trying to be the social butterfly they were never meant to be. But it's isolating because finding even one person who can handle that level of depth is incredibly rare. Most people are looking for casual friends, workout buddies, drinking partners. They're not looking for someone who wants to discuss the meaning of existence over coffee at 2 in the morning. So the INFJ accepts their fate. They're probably going to be alone a lot. They're probably going to have long stretches where they don't have close friends. And while that sounds depressing, there's also a peace in it. Because it's better to be alone than to be surrounded by people who don't see you. It's better to have no friends than to have friends who drain you. Quality over quantity becomes their motto, even if quality is hard to find. The boundaries setting stage. After years of being taken for granted, being everyone's therapist, and pouring into people who never pour back, INFJs finally learn about boundaries. And once they do, everything changes. They start saying no. They start protecting their energy. They start choosing themselves instead of always choosing everyone else. But here's what happens. People don't like it. The friends who were used to having unlimited access to the INFJ suddenly feel rejected. The people who loved having a free therapist get upset when the INFJ isn't available anymore. And instead of respecting the boundaries, they get defensive. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You're not the same person anymore." And they're right. The INFJ has changed. They've finally figured out that they matter too, that their time and energy are valuable, that they don't have to be everything to everyone. But instead of being celebrated for this growth, they're criticized for it. They're made to feel guilty for having needs. So they face a choice: go back to being the doormat everyone loved, or stick to their boundaries and lose people. Most INFJs choose the boundaries. They choose themselves. And yeah, that means some friendships end. That means some people fall away. But the ones who stay, those are the real ones. Those are the people worth keeping. The problem is, not many people stay. And that's when the INFJ realizes that most of their friendships were based on what they could provide, not on who they actually are. That's a bitter pill to swallow. But it's also clarifying. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you stop wasting time on people who only loved you when you were useful. The comfort in solitude. Here's where things get interesting. After all the disappointment, exhaustion, and failed friendships, INFJs discover something unexpected. They actually like being alone. Not in a sad, lonely way, but in a peaceful, restorative way. They find that they're better company for themselves than most people are for them. Alone, they don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to manage anyone else's emotions. They don't have to pretend to care about things they find boring. They could just exist. They can read, think, create, dream, process. They can recharge without interruption. And honestly, it feels amazing. This is when they stop trying to make friends altogether. Not because they're giving up on humanity, but because they found something better, contentment within themselves. They realize they don't need a huge social life to be happy. They don't need constant validation or companionship. They're enough all by themselves. Of course, they still want meaningful connection. They're still open to deep friendships if they happen naturally. But they're not chasing them anymore. They're not forcing anything. They're just living their lives. And if someone exceptional comes along who can match their depth, great. If not, that's okay too. This is the final stage for a lot of INFJs, peaceful solitude. And from the outside, it might look like loneliness. People might feel sorry for them, thinking they're isolated or sad. But the INFJ knows the truth. They're not lonely. They're just selective. They're just protecting their peace. They're just done trying to fit into a world that never really fit them. The acceptance of being different. Eventually, INFJs come to terms with something they've always known but try to fight. They're different. They're not like most people, and that's not a flaw. It's just a fact. They operate on a different wavelength, see the world through a different lens, and need things that most people don't understand. And once they accept this, really accept it, they stop trying to conform. They stop trying to be more extroverted, more carefree, more normal. They embrace their weirdness, their depth, their intensity. They own who they are, even if it means standing alone. This acceptance is powerful. It's the death of people-pleasing and the birth of self-respect. It's the moment they stop apologizing for needing alone time, for being sensitive, for thinking too much. They finally understand that there's nothing wrong with them. They're just rare. And rare things aren't meant to be common. So they stop trying to make friends the way everyone else does. They stop forcing connections that feel unnatural. They stop settling for friendships that don't feed their soul, because they've realized that it's better to be authentically alone than to be fake connected. It's better to honor who they are than to twist themselves into shapes that please others. This doesn't mean they become hermits who hate people. It just means they become selective, intentional, and protective of their energy. They understand that their friendship is a gift, not a given. And they only give it to people who truly appreciate what they bring to the table. The hope for genuine connection. Even after everything, the disappointments, the exhaustion, the retreat into solitude, INFJs never completely lose hope. Deep down, they still believe in the possibility of genuine connection. They still hold on to the idea that somewhere out there are people who speak their language, people who won't find them too much or not enough, people who can match their depth and honor their sensitivity. But here's the difference. They're not desperately searching anymore. They're not trying to force it. They're just living their lives, doing their thing, and trusting that if it's meant to happen, it will. And if it doesn't, they'll be okay. Because they've learned the most important lesson of all. They don't need other people to complete them. They're already whole. This is the bitter truth about why INFJs stop trying to make friends. It's not because they don't want connection. They crave it more than most. It's not because they don't like people. They just don't like shallow relationships. And it's not because they're bitter or jaded. They're just tired of pretending to be someone they're not. They stop trying because they finally learned to value themselves more than they value being liked. They stop trying because they've realized that quality matters more than quantity. They stop trying because they'd rather be alone with their authentic self than surrounded by people who only know their mask. Conclusion. So there you have it. The bitter truth about why INFJs eventually stop trying to make friends. It's not a single moment or one big decision. It's a gradual process of disappointment, self-discovery, and ultimately, self-preservation. It's the result of years of being misunderstood, drained by one-sided relationships, and exhausted from explaining themselves to people who don't really want to understand. But here's the thing that's important to remember. This isn't a sad story. Yes, it's got painful moments. Yes, it involves loss and loneliness. But it also involves growth, self-acceptance, and the courage to honor who you really are instead of who others want you to be. If you're an INFJ watching this, know that you're not broken for struggling with friendships. You're not too much, too sensitive, or too intense. You're just wired differently, and that's okay. It's more than okay. It's actually pretty special. The world needs people who think deeply, feel intensely, and refuse to settle for surface-level connection. And if you're not an INFJ, but you have one in your life, or you've lost one because they pulled away, now you understand why. They didn't leave because they didn't care. They left because they cared too much, and it was killing them to pour into relationships that didn't pour back. The bitter truth is that INFJs will probably never have a huge circle of friends. They'll probably spend a lot of time alone. But the friendships they do have, those will be real, deep, and worth more than 100 superficial connections. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what they've been searching for all along. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. If this resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know your experience. Are you an INFJ who stopped trying? Or have you found your people? I'd love to hear your story. And if you found value in this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that goes beneath the surface. Until next time, keep being authentically you, even if that means walking your path alone.